Welcome to the Stephan Dyer Podcast, my people. Hello, my people. ¿Cómo están, damas y caballeros? Welcome to the Stephan Dyer Podcast, where I welcome people with remarkable stories for amazing conversations. Today I have the unbreakable, the unmistakable, the highly capable, the invincible James Roque, Kiwi-Filipino stand-up comic who was named a Just for Laughs international new face in 2023 and has worked with big acts like Ronnie Chang, Nick Kroll, Dimitri Martin, and many, many others. I am so happy to welcome him. If you like this episode, obviously subscribe, follow James Roque Comedy on Instagram, and share it. Tell more people. Tell everybody. This is a great conversation. And now, how are you, brother?
Hey, bro. Thanks for having me. First of all, you introduced me as unbreakable. As someone who rolls his ankles maybe 3 times a year, that is the most ironic introduction I've ever heard.
Well, I try to make it like big, you know. I met you at Just for Laughs Toronto in September. You were performing. I was opening, but I saw you obviously performing, but I saw you opening for Ronnie Chang in front of, what was it, like 3,000 people?
Yeah, I don't know how big is that room. I don't know.
It was
just a lot of people.
Insane.
It was dope.
And you crushed. So I just wanted to say that openly.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
I really love your stand-up. Got to meet you. In fact, you know when like you're the new person at a festival?
Yeah.
And a lot of people are so much more famous than you are, and you're just trying to make friends. I remember.
I hate going to those like industry parties.
Yeah.
You know, when people like talking to you, but they're kind of scanning the room to see if there's anyone else more famous to talk to. The worst feeling. They're like, no, I know the feeling.
The 3 people that I got to know and that are my only friends, I guess, from the show. Ariel Elias was, I had met her a year ago, and she was kind enough to let me open. Obviously, because we had performed together before, she suggested that I open. She was cool. And then Neil from Just for Laughs, who was the nicest. What's the last name? Neil. Bansel. Not Brennan, obviously. Neil Bansel. Yes, nicest guy. So, and then I met Big Momo Ismail, who was here. I met Ferris, and I met you. And I obviously wanted to have you guys on the podcast. So thank you for the invite. Tell me, this is the one thing I want. I want to know a lot of things. But when did you get the news that you were a Just for Laughs international new face? For context, this is a big fucking deal. This is like they used to just have it in the States and Canada, and then they had the Canada new faces, apart from the US new faces, and then the international new faces, and they get pretty much the best up-and-coming stand-ups from all over the world, and James, who was living in New Zealand before moving to Canada, was one of them. That is a big fucking deal. When did you get the news, and tell me you screamed and cried?
Man. First of all, can I pay you to call my mother and tell her that? Okay.
We'll call her up right now.
It's a big deal. I told her, and she's like, oh, okay. Doing okay. She's like, oh, that's nice. I was like, this is the best people. Anyway.
This is the biggest festival in the world.
Where was I? So I actually... I applied because you sent a submission, because obviously here in Canada, if you're applying for new faces, you showcase, right? So they have showcases in real life where the booker watches you, but because if you live in New Zealand or in the UK, it's very hard to do that. So you had to submit a tape to Just for Laughs to do it, and I was still in New Zealand when I applied, but I told them, hey, I'm coming to Canada. I'm already going to be there. Save on some travel costs. And so had
you decided to move to Canada before?
Yeah, I'd already decided.
Wow.
But then I didn't qualify for any of the other new faces categories. I was like, I'm still international. So I applied, didn't hear anything for months, moved here. It was July. I was like, surely I didn't get it. Okay, I must have not got it. you know, send the follow-up email. Always send up the follow-up.
Yes, the fortune is made in the follow-up.
Send a follow-up email. got an email back saying we're still deciding, keep an eye out. And I was like, cool. They didn't tell me no. And so I was actually on the road. The thing with Just for Laughs that you need to know is when they tell you that you got something and they haven't announced it yet, you're not allowed to tell anyone. It's confidential. So you can't tell your family, your friends, you can't tell anyone that you got this thing. And so I got the call. I was actually at dinner with two other very close comedian friends. My friends Ernie Vicente and Alcantal, who are two very funny people.
Yeah, I know Ernie.
Here in Toronto. Love them both.
In fact, Ernie with the open mic they had at 120 Church.
Yeah.
Comedy Kapow gave me like my first chance in English back in 2016.
Yeah, so Ernie's the homie. So I'm having dinner with these two mates, and I love them so much. And I get a phone call. I'm like, cool. And I see, and it's like, oh, unknown number. I'm like, oh my God. What is this? Is it a scam call? But I knew that it was like around the period where they were calling people.
Yeah.
Go outside, take the phone call. Giant window looking out the restaurant so they could probably see me. I'm on the phone. Will, who was booking it, goes, hey, I'm just giving you a call. It's Will from Just for Laughs. I'm like, okay, here we go. This is either going to be a really sad phone call or a really happy one. And he said, we'd love to invite you to be one of our new faces. And I remember, because I knew I wasn't allowed to tell anyone, the window was there and I was just like, I had to do the biggest poker face. Like, I was so elated and excited. My brain was like, everything's flipped upside down, but I'm standing there and I had to just be like, okay, cool. Cool. Okay, great. Well, thank you. And, I was grateful, but I had to kind of downplay it because and not that I was trying to hide it from anyone, but I just didn't want to screw it up. Like, I don't know what would happen if I told people and it came back to them that I was, mouthing off. So I just had to, downplay it. But I remember, I remember it feeling like it was incredible because I've been doing this for coming up to 15 years this year, and it's like, you do it in such a small country like New Zealand, and you never think, oh, I'll do one of the biggest, most prestigious comedy festivals in the world. You just, you don't. It's in such in the far distance that you just never think you'll get there. And so it felt surreal to be getting that call to be like, you are going to come to Montreal and do Just for Laughs, which was on my bucket list, but it was so far on my bucket list, and I was like, I'll never do that, And now when that happened, I was like, well, what else is possible? Like I've got all these other goals that I've got in the near distance, in the far distance. Are they achievable? Like I've got like write for SNL or like do all these things, and I'm like, maybe those things are achievable too. So it was nice. It was a nice reminder that all the hard work was worth it. So
dude, absolutely, I get it, because coming from Costa Rica, and you see like SNL, and you see, first of all, I never even knew coming from Costa Rica that you could do comedy for a living, and I never even saw it as a possibility for me. But these baby steps, you start taking these baby steps, and then if you work hard, you think that all the other comics are like writing and grinding and on. It's not like that. No. Like it's not like 100% of the time comics are writing and performing. There's a lot of admin stuff that happens, like in the behind. And now with Instagram and Reels and editing, it just adds another layer. But once you get to that place, it's insane, because it opens your mind to other things. Hey, I'm good enough to be here. Why not good enough to do other stuff? Yeah. And dude, congrats, because that is a huge deal. Yeah,
I think too, something that isn't spoken enough though is I feel like people are so conditioned and taught that you have to work hard and you have to hustle and grind, which you do. Yeah. Especially in this industry, you do have to. But I don't think it's said enough how much luck is actually involved in this too. Like, that's only one part of the recipe. You could work hard, hustle,
absolutely,
but the luck, so much of it is like being lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time. And when you get there, you have to be good enough to make the most out of that opportunity.
100%.
And that's where the hard work comes in. Because if you weren't working hard to work on your craft to get good, when you get that shot, if you fumble it, then it's not going to work.
Yeah, that's what, when people will peak too early, that's what happens.
Exactly.
You may not be ready for it. Yeah. I remember when I first started, I remember thinking like, dude, if in 2000, my first show was 2014, but we performed like once every 2 months for the first couple years. But in 2017, when I quit my job to do stand-up, I remember thinking, if I ever do anything Comedy Central related, it would be like, I'm going to cry in the corner, you know? And I got to go to Comedy Central Fest in Mexico in 2019, and I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But,
this is it.
Yeah, but the cool thing is that we had toured in Mexico in 2017 and 18 and done some shows and saw other guys who were on Comedy Central. And when you start to work really hard, you start to be like, hey, I can compete, you know?
Yeah.
And
you can hang.
Yeah, you can hang. Yeah. And when you get that shot, you better make the best out of it.
Yeah.
The other thing, in addition to the luck, is I feel like you can't discount the being a good person to work with.
Oh, go on.
Being professional. And, well, I don't necessarily like the word networking because it sounds douchey or whatever, but knowing people. And because if I know how many combined, we know probably 2,000 comics.
Yeah.
And it's not nice to work with the genius asshole comic.
No.
So you might as well work with good people. Not anybody, but most comics can make people laugh. But you might as well have comics that are professional, that are kind, and that are cool people to work with. So I always made a point, especially not having a network and being an outsider, to try to be a good person, tag people in stories, give them what I liked about their set, and just try to connect and just be a good all-around person to work with, because you never know. People talk, man. People talk all the time, even if you don't.
I think that's an advantage that I had coming from a small scene like New Zealand, is the scene is too small for you to be a dick.
Yeah.
So if you're a dick, word will spread, and you won't work. And so I think beyond like getting yourself work too, I don't know. I think for me, I'm just like, I don't know if it comes from a toxic place of people needing people to like me, but I think my values as a person always supersede my want as a comedian. I'm like, I always feel terrible if I know I've accidentally hurt someone or like said something that made someone feel a certain type of way. And I lose sleep over that. I'm like, I don't, that doesn't sit right with myself, you know? And so for me, I think, like you said, it's so important, to be just a nice person. Especially this industry is filled with like all sorts of mental health issues. people not level-headed people, narcissism, egos. And I'm not saying that I'm a perfect person who's nice all the time. Everyone has an ego, right? You have to put that aside and you have to actively work on that. But I think in an industry like this, it's so friggin' important to have like a set of values that you'll live by when you enter a green room.
100%.
Because like you said, people talk. And also, I just think no one is any better than anyone. No matter, I don't care how famous you are.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people that I've met in comedy, you know, I've had the opportunity, like you said, to open for some big names and stuff. I always remember the ones that treated me like I'm just a colleague in the green room. And I remember the ones that will big dog you and like kind of look down on you. And you remember those people.
100%.
And I always go like, man, I don't want to do that to anyone else. And I actually had there's this kid in New Zealand who opened for me and my group like like 7-8 years ago. I was super young. I was still finding my feet. So there was that ego was still there, and that protecting your spot and feeling like you needed to prove yourself. I was much younger, and I remember later in the years, once he was a little bit more established, he said, "Hey, I remember you were very dismissive of me at one point." And this is, we'd both been established now, and I remember that really screwing with me, because I was like, man, I can't believe I was capable of doing the thing that I hate the most that people do to me. And I think ever since he told me that, I've been like, I can't let that happen again. I can't be that guy for people that makes people feel shitty in this industry that's already hard enough as it is. And
Absolutely.
You're going to be the guy to be like too cool. And and like I said, you always remember those people.
You always remember.
You remember, and then when their name comes up in conversation, you go, I'm not going to say anything, but I did not have a good I didn't have a good time with that guy. He made me feel very small in the green room.
You always know when you ask another comic about, where producers ask you, hey, have you worked with this person, and if it's not an instant, yeah, great person, it's like the silence is like.
If people go, oh, okay, cool, like something went down.
Yeah. We worked together a couple of times.
Yeah.
So tell me about the beginning. Tell me, so Filipino parents, born in New Zealand.
No, I was born in the Philippines.
Born in the Philippines. And when did you move to New Zealand?
Yeah, so I lived in the Philippines till I was 8, and then I moved to New Zealand, and then I spent pretty much the rest of my life there.
Nice.
Occasional visits to the Philippines, but mostly in New Zealand, hence the accent.
Yes.
My opening joke in Canada is literally look like a nurse, sound like a hobbit. Like, that's easy one too. I don't care if it's hack, it gets me out of a situation. Because so many people stare at me.
Yeah.
They're like...
You have to do it.
Well, they don't expect this accent to come out of this face, Like,
you have that one-liner with the British singer? What's the...
Yeah, so, and then that usually I need to clarify it, because if I don't, people look at me like the first time they saw Susan Boyle sing.
Yeah.
Which is like, for those if you don't know who that is, that's the British singer. She auditioned for like Britain's Got Talent, and she came out, she looks like a very pedestrian older woman. You don't think she's going to look like an opera singer, and then she starts singing, and it's like amazing. So like that's and so and that always is a fun joke to do.
It's a great,
especially it's a joke that travels, because shout out to Susan Boyle, she got mad famous, and so everyone knows who Susan Boyle is. So that's an easy one too.
I have a couple one-liners too that if people don't know, and because also Latino guy with a Stephan Dyer name.
Yeah.
It's what? So I go, my name is Stephan Dyer, and
this is in Espanol.
Both is Spanish and English. So I go, my name is Stephan Dyer, and I'm Costa Rican, or as most people call us, Mexican. And then I go, I'm an eternal immigrant. I've lived in 5 countries. I was born and raised in Costa Rica, but my whole family is Peruvian. I also lived in El Salvador, Mexico, Montreal, and Toronto, all because of my dad's job. My dad is a drug lord. And then that gets like, okay, a little bit of self-deprecating.
Yeah.
We'll give it a shot.
Yeah. You get a little bit of the... And I said like those jokes were hack before, because they are the easy jokes.
Yes.
Because I'm in the mindset of there's no such thing as like hack or whatever, unless that's all you do, or in which case maybe it's a little bit easy. But you need those.
Absolutely.
You need those easy ones.
Break the ice.
Yeah, 100%. Those are the conversation starters, and then you can like
absolutely
go into long stories and stuff. And I think people are too dismissive of jokes like that. I think those are good jokes,
And I feel it also when you're a little bit self-deprecating at the beginning and you tell people, okay, we don't know each other yet, but these are things about me.
Yeah.
I'm bugging myself. And then if you go in crowd work and mess a little bit with people, then they're more permissive because you already messed up, like self-deprecating and bugged yourself a little bit. So, Philippines, New Zealand, and what did you study, or how did you start doing stand-up? What was the transition like? What were those first years like?
So I trained as an actor actually for 3 years, but that's not how I got into comedy.
Okay.
So I was in high school, and in New Zealand there's this program called the Class Comedians Program, which is run by a group called the New Zealand Comedy Trust, which is a charitable trust that ensures that comedy in New Zealand is healthy and stuff, and the industry is going well. They run a program called Class Comedians where they go to high schools around New Zealand and they run workshops to see if there are any kids who could be comedians in the schools.
Wow.
And they go to the school. If they think you have chops, they will then pluck you out. You do like a weekend workshop for six to 8 weeks. At the end of that 6 to 8 weeks, where like professional comedians come in, they give you talks, they workshop stuff with you, they get you to do your first writing. You write your first 5-minute set.
Wow.
And at the end of that, you do your first 5-minute set to a fairly supportive audience, like it's not like a drunk open mic. So it's like a really nice way to ease into the industry without just going to an open mic of drunk, scary people.
Yeah.
Which you could argue could also be that's like jumping in the deep end. This is kind of like walking into it slightly.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I remember doing my first set and being like, even though I just did a Filipino Chris Rock impression, like I just did his mannerisms. I was like, Filipinos are late to everything. Like I did the stomps, everything. Crushed. I went, this is fun. I wonder if I could do this.
You were part of the program, the Class Comedians.
Yeah, so I did that.
Yeah.
And in fact, it was actually an accident. I kind of fell into this career by accident because I wasn't going to go to the workshop after school, but at the time I was working at McDonald's, and I hadn't been paid. There was an error, and so I hadn't got paid, and so I stayed behind where all my friends went to the mall up the road because we hang out there after school. Yeah. I don't have any money, so I was like, you know what, you guys go, I'm gonna kick back here. Stayed behind, walked into the drama class, saw that the workshop was happening. I was like, oh yeah, I'll stick around, do this. Did the workshop. I was the one that got chosen. And all these other kids were like wanting to. Did that, and then I was like, oh, this is... And I've always been a fan of comedy.
Yeah.
So it's not like I wasn't interested, but I wasn't planning on going. But yeah, and I went, and then here we are, 15 years later.
So that was a high school thing.
Yeah. So
but
and then
you went into acting. Yeah.
So after high school, when you start stand up, you don't really get paid for the first little while, and so in my head I was like, well, I don't think maybe this is just a hobby. This is just something I like doing. So I kept doing it, on the side. But then I was like, well, I should still do something. I should still study. And the thought for me of doing like a degree or a course that leads to an office job made me so sad. I was like, even at that age, I was like, I was already a creative kid. I loved art. I loved drawing, painting. Because I don't think I could do that. And at school, I was doing a lot of drama and theater. So I was like, maybe I'll go to acting school. Mm-hmm. So I told my mom. She had a heart attack. She's Filipino. And I wasn't going to be a nurse. Bro, I'm not even joking. So I remember when I told her, the week after we were having dinner, and then without even saying anything, she just like slid a pamphlet for like nursing, like what the benefits of having like a medical career. Like it was like a pamphlet for medical school.
Yeah.
Over, and was just like didn't ever read.
So I know this is an ignorant question on my end, but Filipino men also do a lot of nursing?
Both.
Wow.
Very progressive in that way. We don't care what gender you are, you put scrubs on. In fact, I know so many of my homies who are boys who are nurses. That's just a thing.
I'm very ignorant of myself, but where does this... Because there's a lot of amazing Filipino nannies.
Yeah.
But where does this care culture come from?
I don't know.
Because it's very particular to that Filipinos are amazing caregivers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, 100%. And so I say nurses, but like you said, nannies,
doctors,
caregivers at restaurants and stuff. My mom did that too. I don't know. I think there's something inbuilt in the culture, and this is not exclusive to Filipinos, but I know we really lean on this, is that you don't leave your loved ones behind. Like you always, you always look after them.
Yeah.
I always joke that if ever I see any of my Filipino family members or like even my Filipino friends put their parents or grandparents in rest homes, I'm like, do you not love them or what? Like, why, do you not give a shit about your grandma? But in our culture, I think that's like a really big part. And so like, yeah, we're really big on like caring for people in a way, which is weird because that's a long-term thing, because the antithesis of like that is a lot of the time Filipino parents aren't potentially sometimes not like the warmest parents. Like they will, their love language isn't always like words of affirmation of like telling you I love you,
what about hugs?
I care about you. Not a lot of hugs as a kid.
Oh wow.
But it was like feeding you, paying the bills, like all the classic immigrant stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm generalizing. If you're Filipino and you're watching this, be like, my mom hugged me, that's your problem. I know, but I think on a whole, in general, I've traveled the world doing stand-up. I do jokes about this. A lot of people have been like, yes, exactly. They don't know how to apologize. They don't know how, I think it's like a very thing in our culture. But they will show their love in different ways. They'll look after you. They'll make sure if you're sick, man, you're a patient in the house. Like they'll have, my dad, dude, if I tell my dad that I have like a cold or a flu, immediately he's in the kitchen with like honey, lemon, like he's whipping up, he's cooking in the kitchen, bro, like because he's like, I got you.
Yeah.
So I think it's that. I think there's like a thing in our culture, and I don't know what it's like in Costa Rican culture, but if you have a similar thing.
Latinos are very similar to Filipinos.
Yeah.
Not the caregiving piece.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's different cultures among Latin America, obviously, but not as much as the Filipinos. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
the fact that the stereotype exists says a lot.
There is truth in stereotypes.
Yeah, 100%, man, 100%. So I'm proud of that. That's the one stereotype I'm actually low-key proud of. I'm like, people make fun, what are you, a nurse? I'm like, no, but so what? Yeah, we're nurses. My friend Norm has a joke where he's like, don't ever make fun of Filipinos because my sister's going to look after your grandma. don't ever make fun of her.
So good, man.
Which is true. So anyway, yeah, so I didn't become a nurse until I went into drama school. Trained as an actor for 3 years. And throughout the 3 years of training as an actor, I was also doing stand-up at nighttime. And so I was still working on my craft. And I remember being like, I reckon at one point I'm going to have to choose between one of these two.
Yeah. And
I ended up going with stand-up because I just realized I'm a shit actor. Well, I don't know if I'm shit. Like, I'm better than an average person, but I just remember being so much better at stand-up. And also, stand-up paid me more money, like, sooner.
Yeah.
You know? And also, I don't know. Stand-up and acting, I have respect for anyone who does both. They're very hard crafts to master. But with stand-up, there's no lying. Like, you can't pretend to be a good stand-up.
Yeah.
I understand that there are maybe some comedians that people don't really necessarily love or think are overrated or whatever because comedy's subjective. But if they're making people laugh, they're good at their job.
Absolutely.
They might not be for you, but they're still good at stand-up.
100%.
And I think with acting, there are a lot of people who are like, I'm a good actor, but because there's no meter or barometer for you to measure your skill against, there's no reaction. Like if, you know what I mean? Like you can't be like, Absolutely. Oh, I made everyone cry in the cinema. Like,
yeah, immediately the score, you can see the score immediately in the show.
Within seconds. You can see if someone's good.
Absolutely.
You know? And so I think I really love that about stand-up. And so that drew me a lot more to it because it felt more like I have agency and autonomy to be a creative in there. Whereas acting, there's a lot of waiting for your agent to call you to see if there's an audition. And I know a lot of people who love that grind and love that work. But there's a lot of that sort of stuff that I wasn't like really vibing with as much.
And the other thing is, it's hard, but it's great in the sense that you could kill tonight, but you still gotta go do it tomorrow.
Oh, bro. And I like that though.
So humbling too, because you feel like you're the shit in your first couple years, or even now, and then you go to another show and you fucking bomb.
Yeah.
It'll bring you. There's nothing more humbling in the world than probably that.
Yeah.
Where you feel and then it's like, what just happened to me? Should I retire?
Yeah.
After, obviously, as you start to get better, and it happens less, but it could still happen.
Yeah. I always say, I can't remember who told me this. Like a really established comic in New Zealand told me once that stand-up is the only job where you have to do a job interview every time you do the job. Like you never just, you know, and this goes for the super famous comedians too,
Absolutely.
who do big rooms because sure, they can sell tickets based off their name, but if the first that's only good for the first 10 minutes. You know what I mean? They're there because they're excited to see you, but if the rest of your show sucks, they're not going to come back, and they're going to be like, that was a really disappointing show for my favorite comedian. So you need to actually consistently be like on your game and work on your craft, which is really cool. I love that.
And people be like, okay, I saw those jokes already. You have new jokes? You have another hour?
Yeah.
So it's... But in many ways, when I was at the bank, I liked it, stable paycheck and everything, but the future being so predictable just ate at me.
Oh my God.
And being in a cubicle for the rest of my life ate at me. And even now, I teach public speaking at the University of Toronto, and I do a lot of public speaking workshops, and I'm like, but if I had to do one thing for the rest of my life, it would be stand-up. So that's where there may be more money right now in corporate stuff for public speaking, but stand-up is, if I had to pick the one thing, I would do it for the rest of my life. Yeah. And I love to be in that driver's seat where if you fail, it's on me. Oh. But if you succeed, it's on me.
Yeah. No, and what good's money if you're miserable anyway?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What good's money if your life is literally the first 10 minutes of The Matrix, the movie? You know, like before he leaves.
Yeah.
It was just that shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'd rather be... I always say this, and I have to clip this out and remind myself and watch this when I'm like, I wish I had more money. But I would rather be fucking, like... I wouldn't say broke, but I'd rather be, like, doing just okay, money-wise, financially, and loving doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Than like miserable in a desk with all the money in the world. Because what, you're gonna die? You can't bring that with you.
Yeah, we're gonna die. We're gonna die anyways.
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
I remember one time when I got my senior manager position at the bank, it was like a big deal, especially for my family, because Scotiabank is in Latin America, you know.
They recognize that.
Yeah, the bank. I studied finance at U of T and everything, so I remember getting it, and I was so proud and so excited. But there was a part of me that said, like, just for laughs or Netflix or anything that I respect comedy-wise, would feel like 20 times better. It's just like you're winning in a game that you don't want to win, that you don't want to play.
Exactly. Yeah.
So to me, it was a hard switch to make, because
you're LeBron James winning a golfing championship.
Exactly.
I don't really want this.
And yeah, it just made sense to me. I mean, it was a hard decision to make, but it made all the sense. When you started to first 2, 3, 4 years, what things did you do when you decided, hey, I want to do this for the next 20, 30, 40 years? What things and decisions did you make where you were like, I'm going to go pro? I'm going to not be an amateur. We're like, if I do well, that's okay. If I don't do well, that's okay. What decisions did you make? And are there any books or documentaries or classes that you took that really took you from good to great?
I think the biggest mindset switch for me was going, if I want results out of this, and if I want this to take me seriously, I need to take it seriously as well. So I need to invest time in writing. So I like doubled my output for writing. I made sure I was always writing. And then I think the other thing too is I did what I could to kind of hone what I wanted to say on stage.
Wow.
When I actually found my stride and I found my voice is when I went, but what makes me different to everyone? Sure, we all going up there talking about how we're bad at relationships, bad at this, blah, blah, blah. Like, here's my joke about these politicians and, like, the topical news. But what is that actually, at the end of the day, what are you saying with your stand-up?
Yeah.
And I know that there's a school of comedians who will say otherwise. They'll go, no, you're doing the job wrong. You're supposed to just be funny, which I appreciate too. And I love comedians who are just pure silly on stage. Yeah. And I love watching them. But for me personally, I think I wanted to find what I wanted to do with this. And the skills and the industry taking me seriously and everything only came once I respected what I was saying on stage, if that makes sense. Yeah. So like now, every time I write a new hour now, I'm always like, what do I want to say with this hour? And it doesn't have to be big. I'm not trying to change the world. Like, it could just be something small. It could be like, like this is what my perspective is on love, or like all these things, or this is what my perspective is on immigration, on all these things. And I think once I did that switch, then it started to shift. And I have mixed feelings about like comedy schools and like teaching and stuff like this, because I think the best teacher is doing it. You have to have you have to be doing it in a certain type of way, though. You can't just be blindly doing it. You have to have a critical eye for what you're doing in order to learn. But for me, I always, because I've seen so many workshops of people, and very rarely do you really get people come out of them that do well and stand up. Do you know what I mean? And so like 100%. I'm always like, can you teach it? Like, is it a thing? Sure, you can teach like the mechanics. This is how you write a joke, set up, punchline. But if that's all they're doing, and but you can't teach someone how to show who they are and be vulnerable on stage. They need to learn that for themselves by doing it. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's where I'm always like toying whether or not how like I believe in comedy schools as a thing anyway. Sure, if you have a comedy school and some people enroll who already have that innate skill to read a room, be self-aware, understand what they want to say, then they'll succeed. But I don't know. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. But I think for me, I'm always like, Yeah, I'm always unsure about the like comedy books and stuff like that, because you can learn those. I guess you can learn those things. I don't know. Maybe someone will watch this being like, "What a pretentious asshole," and I'm probably wrong. And I think this speaks to another mindset shift that I had was I can't pretend to know everything. Yeah. So these are my opinions, but please understand, I'm still very much trying to learn constantly. I am never like being like I know everything and like, yeah, I need to always be humble and try to take in new lessons from this craft. But
I love it because I feel like we need to take it by stages. I remember my first couple of years, you know, like you're performing and then you have your class, you know, the guys, the people that you started doing comedy with, and then you get like one good show and then you fucking know everything about comedy.
Yeah.
So you're like, hey, you're talking with these people and you're like, but this person doesn't do that, or that's an easy joke, or blah blah blah, they only do this.
Yeah.
And I remember
all the open mics are filled with guys like that.
Yeah. So I remember one time I don't even know who it was, but somebody said like, yeah, but nobody's doing smart jokes and like nobody's really putting some essence into it, and so what? Yeah, you make people laugh, but what are you actually saying? And I remember like going home and being like, yeah, what am I actually saying? Yeah. And then after a while, I was like, dude, I've only been doing this for like a year and a half. Let me perfect the art of making people laugh, and then once you get into the 5s or 7s or 10 years, which is where I'm at now, then I can start to get into that. And one of the big changes for me was in 2018, I got a scholarship at the Second City in a diversity fellowship. So it was me. Did you see you know Cassie Cow?
No, I haven't met Cassie.
She's great. She's been on Just for Laughs too, and a couple of other friends, and one of the classes was finding your voice, or one of the weeks. It was like a 4-month thing, and it was great because it was like, so what? Yeah, you're not so what, like your joke sucks, but what? What are you actually trying to say? Yeah, and what's your point of view? If I give this text to anybody else, then they could just read it and be yourself.
Yeah.
So what makes you so special? Like if you give me Kevin Hart's or Jerry Seinfeld's or Louis C.K.'s or Neil Brennan's text, I'm not Neil Brennan.
Yeah, it's not going to land.
It's not going to land. So in those iterations, it's, I think, you start to find your voice, your style, your delivery, and that vibe that you're bringing to the stage. And maybe that's why people come back, you know. I remember a friend from Mexico, his name is Juan Jose Covarrubias. He's like a dark humor guy. And I remember he came in 2018 and to here, and we did a few shows, and a student at the workshop was like, I want to do dark humor. And he was like, yeah, but maybe I'm wrong, he said, but caveat, I didn't start by saying I want to do dark humor. Yeah. It's like dark humor found me in many ways. So you just...
Why?
Yeah.
Why do you want to do it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you find yourself along the way, and you can't force it because people can see through it. You know?
I also think that like even the comedians who are like, you don't have to say anything. Look at me, and they're successful. I just do jokes. I'm whimsy. No. You're saying something. Yeah. You're saying that life is absurd. You're saying that isn't this all for nothing, and we can all just have a laugh. Yeah. That's what you're saying. So it's not like no one's ever not saying anything, but you need to find like no one successful is ever not saying anything, because you could be like, well, what about Seinfeld? He's just doing jokes and observations. It's like, no, he's actively putting us all in the room and going, hey, isn't it crazy we all have a similar shared experience? Isn't that wild? That's fucking the biggest thing to say. Yeah. That as people, we're all the same. So to me, the idea that no one successful ever says anything on stage is bullshit. Like, that's not true. So yeah, because I always think about this. I'm like, oh man, should I just like focus on just my jokes, or should I drop like, you know, this whole thing where I talk about my culture and Filipinos on stage, and I'm like, but then I do a show and I go to towns and I connect with like these strangers who came and never saw me before, and they go, hey, you know, I've never heard anyone talk about that stuff before. Then I go, I should be doing this.
Absolutely.
Like, that affirms to me that this is actually the right path.
You're making people feel at home.
Exactly, but sometimes you get caught up in the oh, maybe I should be more like that person because they're more whimsy. They do that stuff. Maybe I should be like that. No, dude. Run your race. Honor your voice legit. Yeah. And that shit will just come to you.
And, I like to see it as chocolate broccoli. Yeah. You fucking... Maybe, like... I don't want to talk about being an immigrant in Canada all the time because I have these bits... or about being Latino and an immigrant, eternal immigrant. Yeah. Because I have these other bits that I want to do. But... Yeah, a lot of people will come for the Latino in Canada, the immigrant, but then you have these other jokes that you can put in there. Maybe they won't be explosive, but you're still honoring your voice, and the show is being molded in such a way that it's an experience. Like the other day, I did a headlining weekend at Joker's in Richmond Hill, and it was kind of weird for me because while I just did my hour in English and I filmed it, it was the first time that I ever headlined in English in Canada.
Like a club.
Like a club. I mean, in my life. So it was like, who's going to show up? And it was kind of cool because it was like Latinos with Canadian partners and Canadian people. Yeah. And I was like, fuck, should I change this immigrant experience thing? And I'm like, fuck that. I'm just going to be myself. Yeah. And the opener, Harv, one of the guys, his name was Harv. And the first night, this guy went up. Because it was 2 nights, and he was destroying.
Oh, yeah, you're sitting there being like...
And I'm like, oh, shit. Yeah. They're not going to like me. Because, when you're doing 7 minutes or 15 minutes or 20, you're like... Oh.
You're doing your best shit.
Yeah,
you're... condensed.
Yeah.
Fucking, there's no breathing. Yeah. You just do one joke. Yeah.
And then I'm like, I'm going to do my 1 hour at a calmer pace. But it was a cool experience for me because I was like, I gotta do me. Yeah. I gotta do me, and if they like it, cool. Maybe I'm gonna have 2 followers that really like me. Yeah. And these other people don't. Maybe I'm not the guy, but I'll do it, and it went really well, especially the second night. So I was very proud of that. I also want to ask you how. This is my favorite question for comedians. Yeah. How do you?
Why are you sad?
Yeah. Why are you sad? Where do you organize your bits? As you can tell, I'm a bit obsessed with goals and productivity and shit.
You can't see this. You've got so many Post-its up there.
Yeah. This man is
posting up a storm on the wall.
Yeah, you got the sections of... I took them off, but it was like business, fitness, spiritual, lifestyle, family, relationships. So it's like... Although I took them off, but it's categorized.
No, that's good, bro.
And... how do you organize your jokes?
You're gonna love this.
I have a Evernote, and Notion.
Okay, cool. So I have Evernote as well. I have seeing this Post-it wall makes me think we'll have a similar process. So I have 4 notebooks in my Evernote.
4 notebooks.
5 notebooks actually.
Yeah.
4 main ones, but 1 extra. I'll explain. The first notebook is called Bits. Ideas for bits.
Same.
Number 1. That is just you living your life, get an idea, write down 2 sentences, blah, blah, blah. The next notebook...
Because you will forget.
Because you will.
You will.
If you're a fucking comedian and you're not writing shit down, you're a fucking idiot. Because you're literally watching ideas fly by and you go, bye, and then you go, I'll remember that for later, and then you go sit down at a cafe and you go, what was that thing? You don't know.
Gone forever.
You need to write then and there. Write your bits, ideas. Second notebook is called Write Out, Ideas to Write Out, which is I'll go to a cafe, I'll sit down, when I'm doing my writing, 1 or 2 hours, I will go through my ideas. And
on a laptop or a notebook?
On whatever I've got. I've got my laptop, I've got an iPad, I've got my phone, depending on what I'm vibing with. Sometimes it's just on my phone on the bus. I will then pick 2 or 3 favorite ideas from the Bits, Ideas book. I will move them to that book, to the Write It Out. I'll write out my first blad at it. No filter.
Free write.
Whatever idea, free write, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And then...
Do you write it out, or do you say it and then the iPhone writes it?
So I write it out first.
Okay.
And then when I've got a gig where I can try material out, so I'll then message people, hey, have you got any spots, blah, blah, I'm trying to run... especially if I'm writing a new hour, I'm trying to work on some stuff. Once I've got a gig, then I will, the day of the gig, go through to write out, pick my favorite ones that are ready for stage, and I'll move them to my third notebook, which is to try. And I'll then look at those, and then I'll go. Now, a lot of people can just look at that and go, okay, I've got that, and I'll say it on stage. My brain doesn't work like that, and I'm tongue-tied, so I stumble on my words a lot. So I need to rehearse. I'll then go home, see what I wrote, try to remember the beats, say it out loud a couple times. I'll say it differently naturally.
Yes.
And so then I'll go back and re-edit, and I go, this is how I actually say it.
Very important.
And often what happens is, because when you're just writing instead of saying out loud, it's overwritten. Like, there's always too many words.
Yes.
And so when you say it out loud, you go, I can just say that like that. Trim all the fat out from it. Lean. Now I've got a bit. And then I go to and then before I do that, I actually record myself saying it out loud. Because then that is like an audio record of what I think will work. And then I'll take this little nugget, go to the gig that night. Say if I've got 2 or 3 gigs, I'll go to the first one. I'll try it there. Directly coming off stage, I will make notes about the gig. If possible, before even talking to any other comedians, I'll jot down riffs, anything I did, blah, blah, blah.
Like notes about the jokes or notes about stage presence, crowd work, how you did, what worked?
So general notes first, and then each bit will have its own notes. Mm-hmm. So so I'll do general notes, and I'll go, this joke needed this, try this punchline, see if this works, and I'll go to the next show, and I'll do those changes at the show, and then rinse and repeat that. And then the ones that work, I'll graduate to my 4th book, which is working, but needs more. So those ones are the ones that are working, and I can whip them out in a club set, but I can always add more tags to them, or like other angles, etc. And then my 5th book is my current hour, which is the jokes that make it into the show. I love it.
So, quick question. So Evernote has notebooks.
Yes.
And in the notebooks, you have notes, right? Are these jokes that you write, they have an individual note file that you're moving around?
Yeah.
Or you're cutting it and then pasting it?
No, they're individual note files.
So good, man.
Yeah. And then, I actually have another notebook called Gigs, which is every gig I do, I write the set list. I write the date, I write the time, I write the set list, I write it out. I'll record every gig, audio. I'll label it the same as the note. Sometimes if I can be fucked, I will link them together. I will put it on my phone. And in that set list, I will hyperlink that bit into that note in the other book. So if I ever go, how does this bit go again? I can click it and it'll take me to that exact joke.
So from the jokes that are making it into the special...
I don't know if any of this is interesting to the rest.
To me, it's just fucking music to my ears.
It's so if you have never used Evernote, by the way, great app. It's so good.
Yeah.
It syncs to all your devices.
Yes.
Especially if you don't have Apple. Because I have an iPhone, but I have a PC, so that's not going to work. So I need
Yeah, so you have the paid Evernote.
Yeah. Well, again, if I want to take it seriously, I got to take,
100%. So, in the jokes that are making it to the special, you will hyperlink the recording of a joke that you did in a show, and then in the show one, you have, because I do that too, because sometimes I'll go perform again in another city, and I'm I don't want to do the same thing.
Yeah, so you want to remember,
Yeah, so under every set list and date and city and show, you have the link to the audio, because Evernote allows you to put audio in notes.
Yeah.
And then how do you hyperlink that elsewhere?
Which one?
When you say you hyperlink stuff, if you can, where do you hyperlink stuff?
Oh, the notes. So you can go on the set list is what I mean. So if if my set list was gentrification, I don't know, immigration, blah, blah, all this stuff, the word, I just click it and it takes me to the exact note where the joke is written out.
Oh, yeah. I like it.
And then for my hour, I will then take my favorite jokes and I go on this program called Idea Flip, which is a virtual post-it board which you can, like across the board, but you can do anywhere.
Oh yeah, I did it here for my comedy special.
Yeah, and then so you do that, move stuff around. Yeah.
And you can group them based on topics.
Yep.
So basically what I did for my special was intro, then I had Latinos, then I had dating, then I had English, then I had married, dad.
Yeah.
And every one of those 7 categories has 4 to 7 bits.
Yeah. I think for coming up in the New Zealand, Australia, and UK scene, we do it a little bit differently, and I've really come to appreciate it because every year we write a new hour.
Yeah.
And often that hour has to have like some sort of narrative or like some like backbone skeleton around it. And, you know, that's also what you're doing. But I know a lot of North American comedians will just structure their best jokes and will just kind of make a long set list. But for me, I really appreciate and love having like a beginning, like an actual arc that follows all the way through. And every one of my shows and hours, especially my most recent specials, there's always like an arc that builds towards something. Because for me, that's way more satisfying for an audience. And don't get me wrong, I've seen stand-ups where I'm like, that's just an hour of 5 jokes, and I've had such a good time. But as a creator, I really love sticking the landing on a fucking like doing a callback at the very end of something that you set up earlier. Yeah, and everyone's like, holy shit, how the fuck did you do that? You know? And so that's. I really love that, and that's where the post-its really come in handy, because you go, oh, okay, I'm setting this up here, and it's going to pay off here.
I did the same thing.
Yeah.
So at like minute 7, I had a hook about I see all my immigrant friends. When I came to Canada, I wasn't really sure if I was going to be able to compete. Blah 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 blah, and then in the end, I tied like an advice to the newcomers based on what I had said, not knowing if I was going to be able to compete. And just did full circle. Yeah. And like the callback in the end to like, oh fuck, that had a purpose.
Yeah. No, people appreciate that too. And I know like, you know, it is just a device that you can use as a comedian, but I mean, you should use the tools that you have, right? So. And
when you mean the arc, do you mean like it being like a movie of sorts where there's an antagonist or there's a hero or do you mean like it having a full circle coming back to the beginning or to the hook and having callbacks?
No, I guess I mean more like, and this is again why I'm quite grateful I came from like a theatrical background as well as stand-up, is I treat every hour and show that I do kind of like how I would a play, and that a good theater show has a working question or something that it's asking of the audience or something that you're trying to activate in the audience. And so every time I'm writing a new hour, I will workshop this hour to be like going back to what am I saying with this hour and what do I want people to take away from it, or what do I want people to leave with? What nugget do I want to give? And it doesn't have to be like
life-changing,
life-changing. It's just like, just something. So when they leave, they go, I got something from that show. And it wasn't like just a waste of my time. Not a waste of my time, but you know what I mean. Like,
I know exactly what I mean.
I want to make shows that like will nourish you.
Yeah.
I don't want to make just an hour of like yummy food.
Absolutely.
I want to make stuff that will feed your soul in one way or another.
You want to make comedy that tomorrow the person who came to your show last night is opening the fridge and they're like, huh.
Yeah, exactly. Or driving and be like, huh, oh yeah. Or like. Yeah, and so for me, I did this with my last special, which you can watch on YouTube right now. It's called Badong. The whole story of that is the arc, you could say, is when I moved to New Zealand, I had this Filipino nickname that I was really ashamed of, that I hid away from all my white friends. Despite my whole family and my community calling me it, at school I wouldn't tell anyone that my family would call me it, which was Badong. Yeah. And I was like, you know, really, I didn't tell anyone. I was like, kind of hid it away. And then the whole arc of the show is pretty much growing up and understanding that, no, why don't hide that away? That's what makes you different, and that's what makes you shine as a person. So you should honor that. So the show is called Badong, you know, and so and the show ends, and I just, you know, and it just kind of weaves all throughout, and it ends with me reenacting like the movie that my parents got the name from. This really shit, and I play clips from the movie at the start, and it's like
Instagram.
Yeah, and so like that gets massive laughs, and you think that's it. You think I'm not going to come back, but then at the end, like, you know, I do a shot for shot recreation of it with me playing all the parts, and then at the end, like, I got a tattoo. So it ends with that, and so that's what I mean by like an arc, where I'm like, I like to really.
It's an experience. Yeah,
you have something that, and you know, stand-ups will watch this being like, you're a fucking hack, bro. You were lying. I'm like, no, the stand-up's fire. The stand-up in the middle, great. Like, you can pluck those bits out. I can do them in a club. I'll fucking slaughter it. Believe me. But I still like to have a little casing for this stuff, you know? Like, and so with this new hour that I'm currently on the road with, I'm in the process at the moment of like,
Champurrado.
Of champurrado, yeah. Of fine tweaking that and fine tuning the.
What is champurrado?
So champurrado is a Filipino chocolate dish. It's like a hot rice pudding.
Nice.
That we have for breakfast. It's actually Mexican. Well, so the origins of it is it was brought to the Philippines by Spain during the colonization period, because our main trade line was actually from Mexico, not Spain. So direct Mexico to Philippines back and forth. So interesting. And so it was brought to the Philippines as a hot chocolate drink.
Yeah, I think there's something in Mexico called champurrado.
There is champurrado, yeah, and then in Spain too, it's called champurrado, and they dip like churros in it and stuff, like in a hot drink.
But it comes from cocoa.
It comes from cocoa, yeah. So they brought it to the Philippines, and the joke I do in the show is that means Filipinos saw this hot chocolate drink and went, "Do you know what this needs? Rice?" Like, which is true. That's pretty much what happened. And so, it's a dish that came from Spain. Nice. Via Mexico, and pretty much in the show I talk about my relationship with this dish, and on the flip of it, the show is about my relationship with my father. And last year, I found out he had bowel cancer. Oh, wow. And I was forced to reckon with the idea that my dad might not be around anymore, and like, you know, and that does things to a person when you think about that stuff. Yeah. And so that show is kind of like a meditation on that, on spending time with your loved ones. And also, there's a thing in Edinburgh, the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh, where a lot of comedians will make shows about their dead dads and how much they miss them. And it's like a real thing. And it's a running joke that, it's a dead dad show. Yeah. I wanted to write an alive dad show, because why should I wait for my dad to be gone to tell him I love him? And so that's one aspect of champurrado.
Did you see it?
Not yet, but he will. But he only found out recently that, because he lives in Australia, he only found out recently one of his friends from New Zealand who lives in Vancouver came to the show and I went on tour. And then they messaged my parents, and then my dad was like, "Hey, my friends told me that your show's about me. What are you talking about?" I was like, "It's fine, don't worry." I did ask him if it was alright to talk about his sickness, and he's like, "It's fine," but he didn't know the whole show was gonna be about that. But so yeah, that's one part. But then the other part is my relationship with this dish and colonization and how I feel about it. And actually they come together because my dad's nickname in high school was Champurrado. So like, wow. And this is one of those things where you're like, fuck. Like, I remember I was in the shower being like, what am I going to call this fucking tour or the show? What am I going to do? And I just went like, should I call it chocolate rice or whatever? Because everyone will understand that. Yeah. Like, chocolate rice for breakfast. That's kind of funny, the chocolate rice for breakfast tour. Because I don't want to call it champurrado because maybe, it might alienate some people who don't know what that is.
Yeah, I get it.
But then I was like, no, I should call it that because that is the overlap of everything.
Absolutely, man.
Like, without Spain, like without us going through the hardships of colonization in the Philippines and in Mexico bringing this dish over, my dad wouldn't have been called that name. And he would have not made me that dish when I was a kid a lot, and then I would have never, and so like in a weird way this dish like tracks the history of my lineage.
Absolutely.
And my history of my family, my current history. So I was like, I gotta call it this. So that's what the show is about, and that's what I mean when I'm like, I want every show to have like a nugget. Like, I want it to feel special because you could, and this, you've just shot a special.
Yeah.
you could film an hour of great stand-up and call it a special. But I'm like, is it special?
Yeah.
Like, you just done great jokes for an hour. Like, it's called a special. It should feel like it's like there's an energy, or like you're bringing something different to what you normally just do. And so every show that I do, I'm like, it has to have like something cool like that, you know?
Absolutely. When I was thinking about it for mine, I was like, what would make it special? And I'm like, I gotta have my son in it.
Mm-hmm.
And he introduced me. And this is the cool thing about the shows. You know, this quote by Maya Angelou we use all the time in our public speaking workshops, where it's like, people will forget what you did. People will forget what you said. But people will never forget how you made them feel.
Yeah.
And that is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And people after the show, even now, they're like, "Oh my God, Liam was there, and that was amazing." And that's the one thing I take from. It's gonna be with me forever, you know. And I looked at that fucking video for like 50 times.
That's a really sweet video, by the way. It's very nice.
It was, to me, it's the best. And yeah, I'm very proud of the special. I worked hard on it. I did like 11 full runs the week of by myself here. And I really rehearsed it, like woke up at 5 a.m. for months trying to like structure it, write it. And even though when you start to practice it, it takes a life of its own and evolves. Yeah. But still, I'm so proud of it. But that's the nugget. That's the moment that I take with me. And then I always wanted to. I mean, it's kind of a spoiler, but it doesn't matter. The thing that I left people with at the end was, as immigrants, sometimes we're shy and we don't want to rock the boat, and we just put your fucking head down and do the work, and I don't want to get deported, and I don't want to mess with the police. Exactly. Like so I'm just going to do my thing and not, hopefully nobody will notice me. Yeah. You know? But then, based on my experiences in Canada, I shied away from some opportunities because I thought that maybe white people were superior, or I wasn't going to get it, or et cetera, et cetera. So what I tell people in the end, which responds to the hook in the beginning, is you got to take those risks. You got to apply to those jobs, to those festivals. You got to shoot your shots, because at the end of the movie, and I'm going to spoil it for you, I say, you're going to look back and realize you were good enough this whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is the one reason why I applied to all these fucking festivals. Like, you may not get them all, but you only need one to win, you know? Tennis players, the best in the history, they've lost more than they've won. And most athletes too. So shoot those shots, and in the doing, in the preparing for it, you get better regardless of the outcome. Yeah. It's who you become in the process. So that was one thing I was like, fuck, should I end on a high note, on a bang? Yeah. Or should I end on something that really means something to me, and people are going to take that nugget and be like, hey, this was special. It was an emotional experience. Yeah. And I decided to go with that. It reminds me of clown. I have a friend called Isaac from Venezuela, and he took us to his clown show called Exit. This is years ago. And it's the story of why he had to leave Venezuela when he was kidnapped. After he was kidnapped for 24 hours, and he came here, and the show is called Exit. And in it, of 1 hour, you laugh, you cry, you're sad, you're happy, and it's like an emotional thing. Yeah. And just the fact that I'm talking about it means that it landed, you know? So
and you never know what that little thing that you've put in there will do for someone. Yeah. Because, you know, like, I've had so many people. My previous show prior to this was talking about
Badong?
No, prior to Badong. So it's called Boy Mestizo, and it's about the hangovers of colonization in the Philippines that still linger, which is things like skin whitening, colorism, like people with lighter skin being privileged over darker skin people. People bleach their skin lighter just so they can go up in class, which is bullshit. Like, you shouldn't have to do that. You should be able to embrace your skin. But I do this, and I play the ads, and I shock the people with how shocking the commercials are for the lightening creams and shit, and how, you know, this is what colonization has done to this country. And then a lot of people at the end, had missed. Like, I got people on LinkedIn emailing me because this aired on TV in New Zealand.
Wow!
And when it aired, I remember the day after, this woman messaged me on LinkedIn, and she was like, "I watched your special last night. I'm not Filipino, but I'm Fijian Indian, and I'm dark skinned, and I just want to say I've never heard anyone talking about this, and I felt so valid and seen last night watching your thing." And now, obviously that was a goal to be like, to tell people that you should embrace who you are, but you just never think of the actual reality of that landing on someone who needs to hear it or like needs it. And so those little things, man, like, you don't ever underestimate, like, because you could like change someone's perception of the world. I don't want to say change their life, but change even in that moment, just like cause like, or even it's enough to be like someone felt seen or heard when they saw you do that thing.
Absolutely.
Like that is good.
And you're still gonna get some losers on social media messaging and insulting or whatever, but you're gonna get that anybody who's accomplished anything gets the hate, and nobody hates from above. So chill out, block them, and just know that if you want to do extraordinary things, you got to be extraordinary.
Yeah.
Even I imagine in Winnipeg, and people come into the shows where people are like, "Oh my God, you talking about my experience?" It's like you were talking about my life.
Yeah.
And when we went to Winnipeg too, we did 2 shows, and I don't know if it was Winnipeg or Calgary, but this lady messaged us later, and she was like, "I wasn't gonna go, but because my friend or my partner died last week or something." And it was the only 2 hours of my last few days where I've felt alive. And it was like, fuck, bro. You just never know.
Yeah, you genuinely don't. You never know. It's so weird with like the comments online and stuff, because I'm just like, I have to actively remind myself that no one happy comments negative stuff like that. No one who's happy with their lives, like people who are just like living their lives happily, aren't going, not funny. Like they're not doing that. They're just going, oh, it's not for me, scroll on. Yeah. That's not. So every time I get that, my ego or my like, my lizard brain immediately is like, hey man, fuck this guy. Let's go fuck him up. I'm about to write the most wild shit to get burned.
Let me go into their profile.
And like, I just have to be like, you know what? Don't, like, I have to remind myself, I don't always succeed. You've seen me. I've screenshotted stuff and shared it to my story, being like, hey, fuck this guy. But what I try to do is leave it, step away from my phone, and I come back. And my rule, actually, on social media is if I get a hate comment, I agree with them. If they go, this guy's not very funny, I go, I know, right?
Oh, yeah?
I go, yeah, you're right. Because that's all they want.
Yeah.
Is these people who say these things don't get enough of that in their life, so they need that from the internet.
I also responded, just a loser, don't worry about it.
Yeah, I go like, I agree, or I go like, oh, that's a shame you don't like it. Have a nice day. Like, I try to be nice to them. Yeah. I love you. Like, I've said this to people who say, hey, you suck, you're the worst comedian I've ever seen. And I've literally said, I said this on, someone commented on my YouTube, worst comedian of all time, on my special. And I literally replied, I love you. Because I was like, what am I going to do? Have this back and forth with this person who I don't know, who's probably unhappy with their life? Or just go, you know what? I hope you have a nice day. Yeah. And often... And I don't know if this is the petty thing again, but often actually that makes them even angrier because they're not getting the reaction they want. But I'm like, hey, I'm maybe 10% being sarcastic, but 90% of that is just me just going, have a nice day. Yeah. Because why? This is not going to affect my life. I should just be nice to this person,
I shared the tour dates, like the flyer with the tour dates as a picture or as a video. I don't know, on TikTok. And some guy was like, who is this clown? And I was like, just a loser, don't worry about it. Yeah. And he was like, I think he was like, no, sorry, I just don't know who you are. And I was like, well, come to the shows and find out.
So I don't know if you've had this, but I've had people be super mean, being like, not funny or the worst or whatever. And then when I've said, hey man, I'm sorry you didn't like it, I hope you have a good day, they'll then, like, I've had lots of people reply being like, oh, look, man, I'm sorry. I don't know what I was thinking with that comment, but you're not that bad. Have a good day. Or like I had
sometimes they fall.
Yeah, I had someone DM me being like, oh, sorry for that comment. I was just having a bad day that day or something. Because, like you said, you just never know, bro. You never know what people have had going on in their lives.
100%.
Yeah.
And just to close it off, I know you just went to Mexico.
I did.
And you saw some similarities between Mexico, Latinos, and the Philippines.
I did, bro. Speaking of stuff online that were controversial, man, that video 80% positive, and then the 20% of people who are like, oh, we're not that so like Filipinos being like, that's bullshit. I've had Mexican friends and they bully me, or they call me Chinese or whatever. I'm like, okay, well, that's your experience, and I'm sorry that happened. Or I've also had people being like, no, we're way more similar to Southeast Asian countries because, of the Micronesia migration. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, I never said any of those things.
Exactly.
All I said was I felt at home here, so you guys are projecting whatever this is. But you guys are free to do that. But yeah, I did. I made a video about it, but I noticed that...
the days of the week?
Yeah, I just felt really at home in Mexico in a way that reminded me a lot of the Philippines. Mm-hmm. And obviously the obvious reasons for that are like colonized by the same people. So, language-wise, we're very similar. I said in the video, days of the week are the same. I'm not like a white person panicking if someone goes like 50, and they're like, I'm like, that's 50. Come on, like, because it's the same in Tagalog in the Philippines. And so that was one thing, like language, but then also just the vibe of the people.
Yeah.
And I talked about this in the video. There was like a simplicity about life there.
Yeah.
And I don't say that as a patronizing Westerner to be like, oh, you guys don't have as much. No. I wish I had that shit. Like that mentality of like we have this and we love it and we're having a good time and we're happy and we're grateful, and I fucking wish my Westerner friends would have the same gratitude for their life, and so it reminded me a lot of the simplicity of life in the Philippines sometimes too, which was. And not to say that people who are living in these places don't have issues or problems. Of course they do.
Absolutely.
But I think they don't sweat the little things as much as we do.
And the family reunion.
Of course, yeah.
And the support and just celebrating everything.
Yeah. There's just like an openness to people.
Not worrying about, I don't know. I wouldn't say don't worry about climate change. That's not what I'm saying. But like politics and this and that and everything. Yeah. It's just let's have a good time. Let's be grateful. Let's eat some food.
Yeah.
I love that too. I definitely miss that because I don't have family here except my wife, and although my wife has family, so that kind of has become a family.
So you get the taste of the
Venezuelan Venezuelan hood.
Yeah.
And last question, which is the last question that every comedian gets on the podcast. If we were to meet a year from now with a bottle of champagne, what are we celebrating in James's life?
The next goal is I want to perform I want to perform in the United States.
Yeah.
And do like actual tour dates there. And the big goal is to do the Netflix as a joke.
I love it. Me too.
Like,
I want to go.
So that's on the mood board for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, I have a lot of friends who are there this year. That's why I want to get that U.S. permit, man, and everything, because I spoke to the what's it called? Not the Paramount, but the Moon Tower Festival in Austin.
Yep.
Some of my friends are there. And I spoke to Just for Laughs people who were, and they were like, yeah, come do some.
Yeah.
But can you work in the States? I was like, oh.
Yeah.
So
it always comes down to that,
It comes back to, but hey.
Yeah. But you speak it out in the universe, and it'll
happen. Dude, thank you so much, my friend.
Thanks for having me, bro.
Mil gracias. James, Roque, and Stephan Dyer on the Stephan Dyer Podcast. Ciao. Gracias por escuchar el Stephan Dyer Podcast. Arrivederci, my people.